Hello, everyone.
Right.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Coleen Ordona, Vice President, Account Management Group, Private Sector, LSERV Corporation. And LSERV was founded in 1996 to provide quality service contracting and other human resource services to government and private institutions in various industries nationwide. Coleen brings over 15 years of experience in account management, operations, business development, sales, and marketing, plus manages over 1,000 employees. So I've asked her to join us here today to share her insights on how she does it with such grace. So Coleen, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. I love that intro, to manage things with such grace. Takes a
Right.
lot of willpower, but true. We try to
Right.
manage every day with grace. That's the only
Right.
thing that keeps us going.
Well, a lot of people, first off, when a company of 1,000 plus people, not everybody rises to the top. And even those that do rise to the top, not everybody gets to stay there, right? Not everybody has staying power. So that's worth acknowledgement as well. But before we get into your background in biz dev and sales and marketing and managing people, I wanted to ask, how did you even get started? Do you come from a family of business owners and entrepreneurs, or?
Actually, no, it's a little different. I come from a family that it's two phases. So most are in business of engineering or they're professionals like doctors. On the other side, we have like artists, we have lawmakers, I do have historical roots as far as people that have influenced Philippine history, like writers. So I'm very surprised tracing my family tree at that. And where I fit in is actually a little fluke because I'm the first in the family that ever considered a different take on a course, like in college, interests, and also a path in terms of career that is not normal. But I think it has really just allowed me more opportunities to explore and what to do. My parents were unfortunately not into, while they appreciate education, they were artists. My dad was an artist. He was a little hippie. He eventually dropped out of college. He said, because I got bored with my teachers, because he was so intellectually advanced in terms of arts and sciences. So he just decided to pave a different path. My mom had a different inkling about what she wanted. She always wanted to be, you know what, I just want a family. I want to be a housewife. So that was her direction in life. And not all family circumstances are positive. And I'm very proud to say that I managed through education and my schooling until college because I was a sponsored student. Somebody sponsored my education from kinder until I finished my college degree. And I had the freedom to choose on what school, what course, and I had no demands on like any scholarship. If you're under a scholarship program, right, you have to keep up with your grades, etc. Or once you finish your degree, you have to give back and work for that particular company or for that particular person. I never had that. It was more for just allowing me that opportunity for education. And that really changed my mindset on how I went to school, on why I was studying harder, or for who was I doing it for. And I was not born with a silver spoon, unfortunately. I didn't have a lot of networks to get into jobs after college. There was no such thing. So I was a working student also. I decided to take on a side job for a hotel, one of the top hotels here in the Philippines, the Manila Hotel, and was offered by accident. If I had spare time in college, which normally when you're on your third year, you have an hour or two in spare. So I just decided to, why not volunteer my time? And they would pay me with food, like one meal. And to me, that was like, great. You feed me and I get to learn.
That is so smart. You volunteered.
Learn. Yeah.
Yes. I love
That's
that.
why. Yeah.
You learned. I am
to wear like a professional uniform. You see those suits in black. So it was something that I didn't expect. That was a turning point for me to open doors in the hospitality sector. So you might be wondering, I'm in outsourcing, but I started everything with hospitality because the reason why that my advisor then in college asked me if I had time, I was EIC, the editor-in-chief of our college paper. So that hotel at the time was in transition and they needed people to help them with their marketing, PR materials, writing, editing, everything. So instead of getting like an on-job trainee, so my advisor, he used to work with that particular hotel, but she retired. She said, if you have free time, maybe this would be like a good experience for you. It's going to your writing skills that are within the college, you can use that into the real world. So to me, it was more of, okay, let's gain some experience. Let's see on how that's going to do. So I just really wanted to try. I was a pretty fearless student, maybe because I know that the only thing that I have to lose is not trying. And then I had all of the encouragement from some people, but I had a lot of discouragement. I saw a lot of difficulties because I couldn't cope with what society had and the school that I was in. I was very fortunate to get into a very good school as well. Peer pressure, everyone was wearing the signature clothes and stuff. And I was just coming in plain, and like aunts that lived in the States that would give me all of those signature items. So that at least I really felt that I fit in. So going back, I would spend 3 days a week in that hotel, writing, editing. And I think I gave that hotel a good amount of savings because
Yeah.
I was working, literally
Yeah.
working and banging out press materials, reviewing everything, supporting the PR manager. And I fell in love with it. I'm like, wow, public relations is something that's very cool. And I also got the chance to be borrowed by the sales and marketing head for as an EA, executive assistant, for a few days. Just imagine, I didn't have any idea how is it that you have to do a job of an executive assistant? And then you're in an office, you're dealing with real life situations, primarily language, even at home. And for some reason, they all said, hey, you could do this long term if you wanted. So it was a short stint. It was 3 months, but they invited me again. Would you want to come back over the summer where it's longer period? So I would have 4 days of 4 hours a week. And I ended up doing projects for them, writing to companies for solicitations, because that hotel was really the it hotel for events like Easter celebrations for children. They would have giveaways. And it was so tiring, but so fun. But I
Yeah.
also got exposed to the politics of work. You had to deal with different people. And I realized that I had a keen sense of observation, that I could identify if this person was somebody that I should call ma'am or address as ma'am out of habit, how they were carrying themselves, what they were wearing, how they were walking, who were they walking with, who was talking more and not talking more. And being thrust into that kind of environment really just allowed me to experiment, because I wasn't an employee, so they couldn't tell me that, hey, what you're doing is wrong. But all they could do was give me the guidance and then allow me that kind of leeway. So that was my introduction. And I said to myself that, you know what, working for a hotel is cool. But my course that I took, which was interdisciplinary studies, I majored in French, which I'm supposed to be fluent. I wanted to be a diplomat. It was okay, I want to be a diplomat, but I also want to work in hotels. So I used all of my diplomatic subjects of understanding courtesies, of how to deal with people and manage with people, that it could be an anchor for my PR career. When I graduated, I was telling myself maybe I could go on a break, a vacation. Maybe, unfortunately, I wasn't born into a well-off family, though my relatives were well-off, but my family per se wasn't. And I'm the eldest. So I had a lot of pressure on myself to work immediately and try it out. So as usual, you send out your resume, all hotels possibly. So I said, okay, I'll send my resume to hotels that are maybe 30 minutes from my house, because I was still very impressionable with I would commute, to make sure that they would get me into a PR job, a public relations job, as an admin assistant, as a secretary. I said, that's the entry level, because when you're at that position, you have access to so many things. And I said to myself, once you have access to a lot of information and things, then maybe from there, I could determine on what kind of job I wanted to do, because I couldn't even apply for the foreign service exam to take it because I had a proficiency gap. You need to be proficient in certain things.
Right.
So I said, okay, I have to have a backup plan. And I was so pressured to kick off a career, find a job, and come into, because everyone was wearing that suit. And working in a hotel, you see the black suit, you have pin, your hair pinned back. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to be able to come to work looking like that. And it doesn't matter if I walk in heels so far. I just want to
They do it all day, every day in Tokyo. Those, I don't know how
I
those
want to
little
look
women
the
do
part.
it.
Yeah, I want to look the part. And There was also some pressure because the school that I came from at the time, now it's a very good school. There was a negative impression about the school that I graduated from in college, but because it was a fairly new school. But I had to prove to myself that, hey, products from this school were also great because I didn't just come from that school. I was very fortunate to study from grade school to high school in a private school, all girls, and they really pushed us to be empowered women, speak our mind. In high school, we had debate classes. We were exposed to a lot of things. I think now in K-12, you were having extra classes. In my school, which is St. Scholastica's College, Manila, as early as that in 1990 to 1994, we were given elective classes to prepare us for college. So we had a choice. We had a choice between arts, sciences, math, engineering, and any of those auxiliary subjects that you want to excel in, computer programming, if you wanted to.
That's cool.
So we were very encouraged, and we were exposed also to politics, to go to Congress, to observe. And that was really how I think I survived through college, because the first time I have a male classmate. I didn't know how to interact with guys, sitting with them the whole time. Though we would have like interaction classes when we were in high school, but it's different if you sit with them. You build platonic relationships or something else. And I think how I was shaped from grade school to high school allowed me to flourish in college. So I did get my first job immediately, 3 months after graduation, as a public relations assistant. That's a dignified way of saying secretary, but I was a public
secretary
relations.
with a purpose. Secretary with a purpose.
Yeah, secretary with a purpose, because I was supporting the entire public relations department. All documents coming in, I was answering the phone, I would take on meetings, I would attend meetings with my boss. So even if I was just like a fly on the wall, the fact that I was invited to that meeting, I felt very important. And my boss, you know what, God bless her, she was so generous. She really trained me. She didn't treat me differently. She didn't treat me like I was just a secretary, because to her, you could be a public relations officer, because that was the next step. You could be a public relations manager. You could be anybody. And she wasn't after my school background. She didn't care if I graduated from this particular college.
Right.
She didn't care about that. All she wanted was to do your job well. And how can I help you? So from there, I really enjoyed my time working in a five-star hotel. It was Holiday Inn Manila along UN Avenue. I stayed there for the first few years of my career. But I didn't just stay as a public relations assistant. During the time, I decided to get married very early, and I had a child very early. And everybody was very supportive. You know what? It's an environment that young mothers and impressionable people could start their career. But of course, succumbing through pressures, I had to take a break from working just to see if I can manage being just a full-time mom, but continue on my writing. I never stopped writing. I would write freelance. I would edit papers and documents for my dad and for other people, and I would charge them a bit for that. At the end of the day, you do want some independence and you want your own money. The internet is just booming at that time. Everybody was just like starting off with your dial-ups and all. So I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't just stuck doing one thing, because I was being the eldest in the family. Even if I had a family of my own, I had a sense of responsibility to take care of my own family, my parents and my two other siblings who were younger than me. But you know what? I think being a housewife was not my thing. After 6 months of staying at home, my former office called me. One of the managers, who used to be an HR manager, but now he was promoted to general manager, said, Coleen, I need you. I need a reliable executive assistant. So that's, executive assistant, from public relations assistant to an executive assistant. And that's a manager level. It was an entry-level manager position that not a lot of people would consider, because you're a secretary to the general manager. But
I think you really demonstrated, like, for some people listening here, there's some great stuff. Like, you volunteered your time in the beginning. Like, I've been taking notes. I know I've sipped my coffee and stuff. I love some of the lessons that come from your story. So I also have spent a ton of time I did an 8-month program where it was full-time volunteering in the community. Different, like any community event, we were involved. We had volunteer full-time jobs that changed every 3 months, evenings and weekends. We got Sunday was our only rest day. Other than that, it was like from wake up to bedtime, I lived with 10 other kids. It was a Canadian program called Katimavik. So the volunteering your time to get experience is such a smart move. It just gets you in. You added value to the company before you asked for anything, said, hey, can I help? And that is the foundation of business. Like good business is about solving problems for people and helping others. And you were just like, hey, can I just help you and figure out you didn't even necessarily say it, but essentially you said, hey, can I help you and provide some value and figure out how I fit in? And that's exactly what happened. And so I wrote down that you added value first. What success happens when preparation meets opportunity. I wrote that down because you had been writing like for the school newsletter, and then you had this opportunity in the hotel where you just were there all the time. And then what are you good at? And your skill set, almost a magnet, pulled you in that direction. You showed initiative. That is so lost in a lot of people these days.
I think I notice in the generation now, or look, I'd like to correct myself. It's not the generation. I think it's the time and the season, the period we're in. Like everyone is exposed to saying, if I do something, what do I get in return? It has to be a concrete thing. It has to match to what my idea of what I should receive. At that point, to be honest, Daryl, when I decided to try to work for free or volunteer my time, I never had that pressure from my parents
Right.
to be somebody. So I had a free canvas on what to do. And they would think that, hey, if nobody was motivating you for something, how do you motivate yourself when you're trying to navigate through the world? Hey, I had great teachers. I had friends. I was a member of certain clubs that I didn't think that I could do. I had people that encouraged me to do something, even if I had no idea of doing and I just tried to. And to me, I had nothing to lose. As I said, I didn't come from a prominent family, though I have a very unique name, which initially I thought it was such a disadvantage because how do you spell your name? Coleen, how do you pronounce it even? But to me, at the end of the day, the fact that my name is unique, you can remember me. So it's just also, I think, where you place yourself. And they say that when you have an opportunity at one point in your life and then you miss it, is it going to come back to you? I firmly believe if something is really meant for you, it's going to come back to you in a different way or form until to the point that you recognize it.
Yeah.
But if you don't recognize it, does that mean that you failed? No. Maybe you've just made a decision for yourself to do something different.
Right.
But you have to be ready for whatever consequence that will come from. I think fear is such a great motivation
Yes.
for you to do something. Fear.
Yes.
Because I knew that I had nothing, and the only pressure that I received was I need to support my family. And that's a big thing. Nothing was ever explicit to me. It was never said that, hey, you need to do something. But I just felt it. I think every firstborn has that in them, most firstborns. There's a sense of, you know what, I can sacrifice more because I need to be this. Or they say that all firstborns are unique because there's something in them, that's why they were first. And I also felt the pressure with the people that were supporting me and that were encouraging me, that they saw something in me to do good. And when they would scold me or correct me, it would be, this is what you did do wrong, but this is something maybe you could do or you could have done. Not because that they did it, but because, hey, you did this, but maybe if you did this, and I could relate myself to that. I always had that safety net as well, that I could approach anybody. And in the hotel environment, to be honest, you are exposed to a lot of things. When I was working in the public relations department on my first 2 months, to be honest, they gave us a project and then we had to work with other departments. And it doesn't matter if you're like 2 months old. They say the fact that you're working in the hotel, you're carrying, the brand stands for service, hospitality, caring for people, making sure that we give people the experience. So that told me, so I'm not new. I'm part of this brand. So this is my brand too. And eventually along the way, I just had to figure out which of those good qualities really represent me and I resonate with and I could take on as my brand as well.
Yeah, it gave you a sense of ownership.
True. Also, my sense of identity on who I was. Am I really speaking well? Because do I speak well because English is my primary language or because I have something to say? Is speaking
Mhm.
really my strength, or it's not speaking, it's communicating? Because when you
Mhm.
communicate, it's not just verbal, it's
Right.
also by action, by deeds. I really thought that I would retire in the hospitality industry. I stayed on for about 7 years, the first 7 years of my career. And coming back as an executive assistant really paved the way for me. I am so fortunate, Daryl. I've never had a bad boss in my life.
That is a fantastic.
Never.
It's
I've
great.
never had or a bad boss that really traumatized me. Never. I hear some of my friends say that, you know what, my boss is like this and that. And I'm like, wow, I'm so blessed. I've never had a bad boss
But
in my life.
part of that might also be because from your story, it seems like you developed a proficient level of emotional intelligence and people skills. That was something that you really went into detail on when you were working at the hospital, that you learned different types of people and how to communicate with them. And that may be part of it. If you have two people that don't have emotional intelligence in a room, there's going to be conflict. But even if the boss is lacking in emotional intelligence, if you have a high degree of it, it helps them be a better communicator. And so that may
True.
be part, that may be something you haven't realized. Based on our research, like I spent $50,000 researching business success. I've had my own track record, help people make millions and stuff in the past. And during the pandemic, we actually tried to dive into it. And emotional intelligence is one of the factors of success, at least as an individual, like self-efficacy. And that's, and what's included in that is self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Of things, yes.
Yeah.
I think we all have come to a point of a tipping point of maturity, and you need to know on when that happened.
Right.
I am aware on when my tipping point of entry into maturity happened. I was 12. It happened because of a very traumatic experience happened in my family. But I realized that I was 12, but I was thinking 16. Unconsciously, I was
Right.
doing that. And I saw the world differently. And looking back at it, I missed a portion of my childhood, to be honest, the things that people do. But I realized that I wouldn't change that because that just made me I think I relived a bit of my childhood when I turned 40. I was able to do more things that I didn't get to do before because I was more comfortable with myself. And you're correct. Most of the bosses that I worked for have very high emotional intelligence. But when they told me about where they started, from humble beginnings to where they are now, and I was just so thankful that I knew when to push and when to pull.
Yep.
They also put a lot of trust to expose me and share their life experiences with me. And there are some things that up to now, like bosses that I've had, like in my early 20s, that they've shared with me things that I will hold on to my grave because it's something that, hey, I don't think that they do share those things. And also at the point when I've worked for both in foreign and local bosses, I think that's my advantage. I was never afraid to talk to anybody, and also that I would ask questions. And sometimes they would get so irritated that you're asking too much. I said, I need to know
Yeah,
because
it's important.
I don't know everything.
Yep.
I just don't know everything.
Yep.
And some people think that when your name has a position under, you should not ask questions. That
That's
not
the
in the
opposite.
position. You can't say that you don't know anything. Up to now, I ask questions. That's why I have a team. That's why I work with a team, because
Yeah.
I need to be with people that know more than me so that I can learn reciprocally and then they can learn from me too.
Yep.
If I were the genius, then why would I be sweating on a lot of stuff? There's no
Right.
such thing. There's no
Right.
such thing. And working for hotels was really tough. We would work 6 days a week. We've had an experience wherein I worked 21 days straight with no day offs because of the occupancy of the hotel. Aside from that, just because of how volatile the industry was, we went through a period of letting go of a lot of people. And at the point, I even had a moment of I feared for my life when I was working in the hotel as an executive assistant to the general manager because we had to let go of people because of SARS. There was that was the first wave. It was like the low version of COVID. Occupancy was at 12%. How can a five-star hotel survive at 12%? And then you have so many people. So we had to furlough a couple of people, and the union didn't like that. So they were picketing. And my boss would say, you have to be careful because you're with the executive office. They might just pick you up. And I'm like, that's extreme. It's like, no, because they could do anything. So then my boss then exposed me to the art of a different kind of negotiation. Yes, I would debate, I would speak well in my high school days, but negotiating on a collective bargaining agreement, that's something that really, I think, inspired me or laid the foundation on how now I review a lot of our contracts, how I look at discussions, how I look at talking to executives or clients when they share certain situations and scenarios. I use that motion in my mind on how discussing with the union about their rights, their coverages, their privileges, what is the scenario, what is justifiable and what is not justifiable, what is circumstantial or not.
Can you maybe share a little bit, like, what are you doing now? You've talked a lot about the hotels, but maybe for the listeners, what are you doing now?
Right now, what I do is I manage an operational team that deals with client requirements. So we start off with negotiating for contingent staffing. So that's business dev and sales. So I had a team that has a business dev sales arm, and then the other side is the operational arm that translates any contracts that are negotiated. So we present services and analyze the requirement of a particular client based on industry. So we do a lot of R&D and research. So that includes hotels. So anything that I've done in the hospitality industry or how I look at it, I've applied it to logistics, property management, how I engage when I was working with hotels, with guests and my bosses. I would use that to speak to procurement managers, sales managers, HR managers, general managers as well. So it's more of how to complement the service and what you need and then price it properly so that we both win-win. So that's what I do. And the thing is, I support my team to review all of these commercial terms because you don't just sign on the fine print. You have to read on everything.
Small story. This is just something I read yesterday. So all of us have had the issue where you open up a bank account or you apply for a loan or even you download an app and they give you this massive list of terms and conditions. Apparently, I don't know if this was in the States or some other Western country, but apparently this guy opened up a line of credit and they sent him all the contracts and he went and he added some terms and conditions and signed them and sent it back to the bank and they never checked it and they signed the document and he ended up and I'm not endorsing this behavior, but it's just funny because he ended up running up his line of credit and then he wasn't able to pay it or something and they tried to collect from him, but he pointed to he took him to court and won because he had added terms of the contract that they never read and they just signed it. And it was like he got them with the things they sometimes get us with because we don't always read the details. And that's just, I just wanted to mention that because you're just saying, I tell my team to read. So just, I thought that was.
And I think reading anything that falls on your desk, that's also what I was doing when I was a public relations assistant. When I was volunteering my time, I had to read something first before I had to write about it. I had to read something and then research it before I write something about it. And then from there, use that. And when I was a public relations assistant to an executive assistant, anything that comes on my desk before it, even if it says to the general manager, I have to proofread it. And even down to I'm sorry, you need to correct this because there's wrong spelling, missing comma, missing that. And you're talking about the director of sales, you're talking about the finance, you're talking about executive committee members, and you have to tell, I'm sorry, the boss will not sign that because you have a missing margin. The paper is dirty, please reprint. And they're like, wow, you're strict.
Yeah, but that's part of what helped you succeed. So you mentioned that your success is that you work with a team, and I think success is a team sport. So how do you approach team training and development to help these people improve?
But one thing is when a company has its own training plan and pathing, that's great. But if you're coming in, you make sure that you try to, I've always encouraged one-on-one coaching or training, or even or I don't want to call it training. I just want to call it mentoring and having that quality time individually. Because at the end of the day, you also set a general standard for everyone, but you make sure that this is not the standard that they need to be. Because example, English proficiency is not for everybody, but understanding what someone is saying, now that's a skill that you can't teach a lot of people. So I make sure that, number one, to assess on where they are and what they can do and cannot do. And I try to identify immediately what are their best skills. So their best skills are what I would anchor on to support their improvement areas. Normally, people call it weakness. I try to not use the term. I want to use areas for improvement. I call it areas for improvement so that you change the negative into a positive. It doesn't mean that you're weak, that you can't do it. It's just that you need something else. So it's an improvement area. Next is when I try to correct somebody, I go as far as explaining the reason why that this works. It's because of this, but this could work for a different scenario that they've either encountered or they will encounter in their job. I also try to put people in certain situations like how I was put in. Example, their job is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I add a sixth item for them to do and see how they respond to it.
Challenge
If they
them.
think that this is not part of my job, or if they ask,
I hate
ma'am, how
that.
do I do this?
I hate that. When people are like, this isn't part of my job, I'm like, oh, then you need to go find a new job, because everybody
Well-
here works for sales and customer success. That's everybody here works for that. I don't need any monkey button pushers. The monkey button pushing jobs are all taken. I hate that.
True.
I hate that. I hate that so much. Because people, yeah, sorry, I almost went on a rant, but that is just, for me, that's just such a red flag that this person is not growth minded. They are not trying, because all my staff, and forgive me, but all my staff, we try to have a profit sharing program and incentives so that way there's incentive to perform at your best. So that's why whenever somebody says, oh, this isn't my job, I understand if you haven't been trained, and I understand if it's a new, I fully understand all those. But that this isn't my job. The company's job is to get the work done so everyone gets paid, the customers are happy, and we all get to live our lives outside of work. That's your job, is helping that happen. Sorry that you just hit me with something.
No. Yeah. I think I do appreciate the honesty if somebody tells me, you know what, this is not my job. Then I have to explain to them the reason why that this is actually part of your job, because it is
Right.
related to things that you're doing.
Right.
And there's a running joke. Did you check your contract that on the last line that says, and all other tasks as required? If that line is there, if that line is there, it could be anything. And truth be told, I also had a period in my life when I was working for a small local hotel group that they asked me to do something. And for the first time in my life, I said, but that's not part of my job. But you know what? You need help. And I know I could deliver it, but you did approach me first. But now you're giving me a very short lead time to do it. I'm going to make the impossible possible. And to be honest, I had that mindset, the back of
so powerful.
everything that I do. I
powerful.
try to make the impossible possible.
Yeah, I love
Because
that.
I don't think that something is, a lot of people may not agree with me. All things are possible to be done if you look at it in different perspective. If you look at it in one way, oh, definitely it's not going to be done. But if you break it down into something, maybe you could get something done just to get the end result. It might not be what you wanted, but at least it's something close to it to achieve what you want to happen. So when I try to train my team, as much as I want to do both, I want to have a formal setting when I could have a plan, when I could have a reference, but there has to be something that I give to them as a reference point. It can't just be all verbal for them to take note of. I think that's one of the mistakes that I've also learned in the past, that I was so used to just giving direction, instruction, coaching, and guidance that I forgot that, hey, the person that I'm talking to may not be at the same level of understanding or appreciation. It's understanding and appreciation. Somebody can understand and they'll do well. But when the person understands and appreciates, then they apply it to other things that they're doing. And then you see them when they talk to other people in their team or other teams, you see that semblance of, hey, they're listening, they're analyzing. And then I could see that, hey, that's something that we do. So I'm so proud when I see that transcending or translating to how they're doing it in their day-to-day work. And I would always tell them that point A to point B is not point A to point B all the time, because you have a different way of doing things. As long as you don't, this is the process. Hit all the marks. It could be all in Tagalog or in the vernacular. Hit all the marks. But if you do a shortcut to something, you have to tell me why, because maybe for certain situations, it could work.
Yeah.
So
it might even be better.
It could be. You have to work smart, smart and hard at the same time. So you provide the structure for them. I would always tell my team, this is the sandbox that you play in. I gave you all the parameters. Stay within the parameters. It doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can go 1, 5, 10. As long as it's in the parameter. But if you feel you're about to go outside of the parameter, you have to give me a heads up. Why?
Right,
I need to
right.
provide you that safety net. That's one thing that I also tell my team. I'm all accountable for you.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
gave this talk to them last Friday. Your success is your success. My success is your success.
That's my
Your
tagline.
gap,
That's my
your
tagline.
gap is my gap.
Yeah.
My gap is my gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anything that they do, and they also represent me in as much as I represent them, because at the end of the day, I attend meetings on their behalf too,
Yep.
because everything is like overlapping, right? So at
Yeah.
that point, I'm not coming in as Coleen Ordona, the vice president. I'm coming in as Coleen Ordona, your account manager. So I tell them you have to wear different hats. Another thing that I also try to teach my team is when you come in a corporation or a company, you build professional relationships, then friendships. But the pitfall is they think that they've built friendships first before professional relationships. And sometimes the friendship part influences on how they actually conduct their
Right.
professional relationships, especially if they have succeeded or if they have been promoted, then they have to treat the other person, their friend, as their subordinate. So I have to give them that kind of balance. And it's also a matter of preparation. You don't just promote somebody on a whim. You promote somebody because you try to groom them. So you see, and I've seen that here in my 9 years here in LSERV. I have managers right now that I'm very proud. When I joined, they were HR assistants. And I had an early interaction with them, and I could see how they were going on with their day, how they would talk to people, and you would try to involve them, ask for their help, so that they see that, hey, you're part of the success. And now they're like senior account officers. They're
Are there specific skills or behaviors that you believe are important for staff? Like specific
Yes.
things that are, yeah.
Yes. Number one is they need to have a sense of self and confidence in themselves. That's one. Second is that they're open to training, to correction, and to mentoring. Actually, I put correction first. Correction, training, and mentoring. Because if somebody is not open to being corrected, then you'll never learn.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then next is integrity. You need to have at least integrity for yourself on the values that you stand for. Because if you know what you stand for, then you can bring something extra to the table. And then the last one is that I noticed that I want to know your secondary skill. Maybe your secondary skill is that would be your acumen in the long run, because no one is just stuck in one path. I think not everybody should just do one thing in their life. Everyone needs to be interested in other things as well. So I also look at how they treat other people, because values, attitudes, that's very hard to find. Skills you can train, but in fact, the reason why that you're good at something is because you're interested in it. You're passionate. May it be your motivations. It could make money. I could make money out of it, but still you need to spend time with it, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing would be if they need to be honest about certain things. I can't do this. I need help, or I'm having a difficult time. And in fact, in the Filipino culture in general, that's something that's still very challenging. They are so afraid to ask for help. They're afraid to admit that they need help. They can't do it. So what they'll do is they'll pull in all their time to try to work it out. And then when it's really like exploding, you're already at the end of your leash. That's the only time they try to escalate it. But my role is to observe, because I know them. I can sense their body language change. I can sense if something's not going great, if they're having a bad day. So it could be personal or professional. And I also prepare my team before we go into meetings. There's like a 10-minute preparation from the office. If we go to a client office, I prepare them. Okay, we're going to a meeting. So we're talking to this person. I will do my research. And then they would pick it up. Okay, we're going to a meeting, but we already know who we're talking to, what's their background, where did they come from. I'm like Googling and checking, because I tell them I need to know how to talk to them. Because if we don't know how to talk to them, we'll never get our point across.
Yes.
We'll never get our point across.
Yes.
And that's something that I think not a lot of people do. It's like, Coleen, you're stalking that person. No, I just want to know how to
Well, maybe I am. It depends how you look at it, but it's with good intention. Yeah.
Come on, Daryl. I go as far as example. It's a client, example, Ericsson, the telco company. Okay, so I come in and then the building is in BGC. Okay, BGC, let's come semi-professional, nothing too casual.
No
That's
flip
one.
flops.
That's what next is, yeah, exactly. Or please keep it simple, keep it easy. So I really tell my team, and as far as coordinating what to wear, because that's very important. And I also tell them once we're waiting in the lobby, in the reception area, please avoid small talk about certain things. Sit down, observe people that come in and out, because that executive assistant, that secretary there is telling somebody inside, you know what, this person is like, yeah,
You
still
never know. You never
come
know.
into meetings, I always tell them where to sit, because I tell them the reason why that you're sitting here is because you need to observe who is doing what, and watch
Yes.
out for
Yes.
those things that are not said. So
Yes.
that,
Power
ma'am, how
dynamics
do you
in a
know?
boardroom.
Yes, exactly. I
Right.
don't know.
Yep.
I think it's also something that's not done in school. I learned all of this because we were prepared when I was in high school in St. Scholastica's College. We were taught very early how to present your calling card, how to dress, what to wear, how to sit. When you're in a meeting and you're just observing, where do you put your hands? What do you wear? What do you write? And all of those standard things that I think are lost in translation now. So it's not being very anal about it, but it's
No,
also
standard.
helping them to conduct themselves. So that's the thing. We like to bring in people to events and meetings, but we don't prepare them. So how do they act? Because they're representing the brand, they're representing you. And then after the meeting in the car, we try to recap on, okay, you know what, these things, involve them in the discussion. And I remember the first deal that I closed for LSERV. It was just me and the service assistant, the driver. When I got out of the building, I told the driver, oh my gosh, we just closed the deal. Congratulations to us. And he was like,
What did I
shocked.
do? But he's
I
part of
said,
it. Yeah.
I said, if you didn't bring me to this meeting, I wouldn't
Right.
close the deal. So we closed this deal.
Right.
So
We did it together.
that's a different mindset, I think, because coming from hospitality, everybody's doing it. Training is also a constant thing, and you need to be able to be trainable yourself. And I'm very surprised that some of the people in my team are a little afraid if I ask clarifications on things. They think that when you ask questions about how they presented it, that it's wrong. I said,
Yeah,
no,
something's
I want to
wrong.
understand. I want to understand. But you know what? I'm also at fault. I need to be able to adjust my tone,
Yep.
also the words that I use, how I say it, my body language as well. And while we keep a professional relationship here in the office, I can't help but also be the motherly lead,
Well,
because
but
I look at,
and it's also business is about outcomes at the end of the day,
this
right?
is
Like,
about relationships too.
of
Whatever
course.
it is that takes to put them into a comfortable place. But you also know when to stop, because there is a period of the honeymoon, the training period is over. Training is ongoing, but it should level up. If
Right.
training is still going back to basics, what's the point? Because subconsciously, I think this is something that I also have to start doing. I need to be able to have a mental note in myself that for a certain group of people, the training should be this portion already. Or bring them into, you know what, I have to have a face. I need to face everybody right now and help them imagine, okay, now you're this position, but you're actually doing part of the job of this particular position. Maybe that's something that you can do in the future if you want to, but never force anyone. But sometimes when you're given a position or given a task, you do it. So you need to have the boldness also to do it, even if you're unsure about it. I never thought, to be honest, that I would reach this position title. I never had the plan, I never had the goal, because I was raised that way. No, nobody told me, you know what, Coleen, you need to be a vice president, you need to be this. No, I just wanted to have a good job, to be able to earn, to be happy, to learn, to contribute, to be relevant, to be significant, and to belong. And the last part is to be able to have a voice to finally do something. I'm such an idealist, but I just want to give back. I think that's the best way for me to give back to the sponsor that funded my education. Really, they didn't ask anything in return. They just wanted me to be the best and do the best that I can do. So if I could do that, and The funny thing is, people think that I come from a well-off family and all, but when I tell them that this, they're like, "What?" I say, so you can't judge people, and I
Oh,
get judged all the time. Like when I joined LSERV about 9 years ago, coming from because I came from hospitality, I was just speaking in English, and nobody was talking to me. They were like so afraid to talk to me because the language is mixed, Filipino and English. But I was just always speaking in English. Then I had to learn, and I'm very thankful that I came into this company. I speak more Tagalog now, even with clients. I'm more comfortable, though people think that I'm still unapproachable, but still, you develop a sense of community. Also, you need to be very resilient,
mm,
even if there's so many things that are happening right now, and develop a coping mechanism. That's also one thing. I try to provide a safe space for my team. That's my personal thrust because I understand what they're going through and maybe they're not comfortable to tell me, but I'm very observant. So I try to go beyond what I know how to take care of them. Like we would have pizza sessions, or I have this thing that I started. I'm stressed. So if I tell them, you know what, I'm stressed. And that's I think my flaw also. I'm very open to my team because I need to tell them where I am, if I'm in a good headspace or if the day is going well or not.
right.
Because you don't want them to feel that you're picking on them or you're
Of
angry
course.
at them. And I
Yeah.
explain to them, I'm human. So right now, I'm not feeling great, but that doesn't mean that you're doing bad. So
Right.
they also adjust. But sometimes I set it aside. So going back, I tell them that I'm stressed. Let's order food. And food is the ultimate equalizer. It changes the way because food doesn't get mad at you. Food will just love you. Also, maybe food builds community,
Eating
and
together.
maybe that would be the answer to somebody that's feeling down and can't express it. But once you get that break, oh, let's eat together. Then it creates that break of a day. And maybe that's just the only thing that's going well for them on that day.
Yep. Yep.
Now, am I buying their affection or love? I don't know.
No,
But to
no.
me,
It's
but
something we've
to me,
done.
it's more of thanking them for, hey, we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat, and let's just take a break.
Well,
Just take a
it's sharing time. It's, if your hands are full, there's no room to receive. Silence
correct,
is as much music as noise is. And I've recently
correct.
changed I've been working my business, my company, we've been 100% work from home remote since 2014, 2015.
Hmm,
But I've recently been pivoting to be a hybrid model where 2 days a week we're in person because there's just some things you can't do remotely. And we provide
correct.
lunch on those days. And we've had breakthroughs just sitting around talking and eating together, just not working, just hanging out talking. And then an idea comes up or somebody mentions something and we would have a breakthrough because there was
Correct.
silence. We were just together in silence and sharing, facing each other. There's just an unspoken value to that I think is really important.
But it's also something that I would tell them that I would like to thank you really for everything that you do. And to be honest, when I started to your evaluations when they come in, they're very surprised that, of course, in a team, we call hierarchy, right? So down to the top up to the bottom. I would take the time to really write about that person. I guess I have this talent to observation and try to engage with them. And I really cite with them on what specifically they did. I'm blessed with high memory retention. So I really tell them that, you know what, there was this time that you gave me this and I can't forget it. And that's something that really I would try to look back on. And not everybody will write something because it's different when you type it out for formality, but I make sure that it's handwritten by me. So I try to write very well. My handwriting is so poor, but I just make sure that, hey, you're great. I always tell them when I say it, I just don't say things for the sake of saying. I don't believe in that. I don't need to motivate you to lead you on to something that you're not, because I will be responsible for that on how you turned out.
Yeah.
Because I look back at all of the people that helped me, that guided me, that supported me, never led me astray. They would also tell me when I'm doing really well or really bad,
Yep.
but never to end in the negative. They would always say, you know what, you need to look back, recovery point. You need to step back. Also, when things are just overlapping, even if it's not part of what you need to do, I try to take it on, because sometimes you can't give people what they can't do. You can't give what you don't have.
Right.
You can't give what you don't have.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a breaking point to how far you can give somebody for them to experiment on, to try to do. But
Right.
if you do that, you need to be certain that you have something to
Yep.
to counter that at a point. I think just taking time for that and show them that your humanity. Somebody told me, I've had a moment when I cried at work and they could see it. I was tearing up, but I was like still straight faced trying to work. But you know what? It's just there. And my team was just like, do we ask her if she's okay or not? But they just carried on. And then they asked me, and I said, you know what, I'm just having a bad day, etc. So they see that, hey, our boss is human too. She has problems, she has issues, she has just like us, but in a different way. But at the end of the day, if I'm having a problem, my boss set aside all of that to help me. So I want to be able to reciprocate to that. And it's also amazing I realize that I always tell myself sometimes that I don't think that people are learning anything from me. You feel that comes to a point, but then you see it, you see how they're doing it, and you can relate to it. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. So I shouldn't negate myself. I shouldn't say that they're not learning, because if I do it consistently, that's the thing. You need to be consistent. If you correct at something, you have to be consistent to correct it. You have to be consistent to follow through. And I did mention, I'm blessed to have retentive memory. So I know that, hey, this is what I said before. And then I would cite a concrete example, an example to them on what happened that they can apply and what could be done in the future. So I always do that. Or if I don't understand something, I really have to ask them to come over. They also know that I really read through the fine print. Even that single number changes everything. And I tell them, especially for our business, you're right. Anything that you correct in that contract and then it's signed, that's it.
Yep.
That's it. Now you need to have a backup plan, and you need to tell. I always remind my team that document everything, especially if it's unusual, if it's not in the norm, or tell somebody about it so that you're not the only one that knows about this kind of
Yes.
arrangement. Sometimes we all make decisions, like the members in my team, they are all empowered to make decisions. They make decisions on their own based on the sandbox. But sometimes, I guess, in their desire to help clients, they really just go beyond. So to me, that's a good thing. It means that they're really assessing and using their ability to make a decision. But the thing that they need to do, if they know it's something unusual, to immediately tell me so that I can create that space for them to assess, hey, this is something that we need to consider, then I'll make it a protocol or make it a policy. But if not, then I have to do the firefighting, which I think they know, which is going to be very costly. And I tell them that is called service recovery. Service recovery in the hospitality sector is times 10 of a loss. So I equate it using a monetary value so that they know how much it's worth.
Yeah. Ah,
Yeah.
powerful.
So that they know how much
they
it's worth.
understand the ROI. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do everything correctly at the first run because situations are different and you deal with people. But at least you know that you don't need to spend so much time trying to recover from that. But if it escalates to certain things, so it's good to bring in people, how you think, you share with them. But at the same time, you also highlight to them on how they think because they're not aware. A lot of people are not aware on what they're good at, how great they are at doing certain things. And it's sad
Yeah.
because when you compliment them, they cringe. They can't
Yeah,
accept it.
they don't know how to. I think again, that's a bit of a failing. The education system was built to produce factory workers more than critical independent thinkers. And like you said,
Thinkers, yes.
and this is something that a lot of people, if they don't get it from a sponsor, a mentor, a parent, they struggle. Like positive feedback or negative feedback. Like
Correct.
that's part of life. And life is unless you're dying, it's a growth process, right? Everything is growing unless it's dying. And so if you're not improving, if you're not growing, you're stagnating. And then what? Coleen, you've given so much good info. I've got 2-3 pages of notes here. The listeners may want to go back and take some as well. Now, I do want to be respectful of your time, but I wanted to ask you, is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
No, you've asked me like a lot of things, but I think I appreciate you in this conversation because I feel that there's a lot of things on that I forget. Okay, how did I get to this point in my life? And right now, I feel that I'm still starting off. I'm
Yeah,
not yet at the end point on where I want to be. There's just so many things that are changing in this time. And it's very important to be empathic.
right.
I think empathy is of something that's not in everybody, but I would like to believe that, kindness, goodness, and being empathic goes a really long way. Every professional, because I belong to the old school of trying to work hard and being resilient. But I have great hope for the next generation of leaders, especially here in LSERV. They're now preparing the way for a different kind of business relationship and engagement. But I just hope that the industries that we service are also ready for that, because a lot of the industries that we service for LSERV, and even when I was in hotels, they're so stuck in the same mindset of things. But again, it all takes a visionary of a leader for an entire company to pivot and change. And I'm working for a company that's led by our president, Mr. Joseph Angeles, who has been both a visionary, an operations manager, and a trailblazer in the servicing industry. And I'm very thankful that I think my attitudes and my work acumen complement him. So I have managed to find a place in his team. And I'm already at that point in my career that, you know what, it's time maybe for a different set of mindsets to be able to be
Mm,
the best person that you be. Learning is constant. And I wish that I could also maybe go into further studies. That's one thing that I'm hopeful for. Maybe if I didn't take the FSE, maybe a masteral would be great to complement, because I'm not a business person per se. My course is so far from what I'm doing. So it's all learning. I would like to acquire that certain technical skill as well that I know that I need to be able to further what I know I can bring to the table moving forward. Not just for LSERV, but for the clients that we service. We want to be able to work with them longer, like 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, and LSERV to be like celebrating its 50th anniversary, hopefully,
that's
and
great
still be
news.
a part of it.
Yeah. I think I just want to speak back on a point you talked about empathy being so important. And you mentioned
Yes.
earlier before as well about relationships. And you didn't say it specifically, but what I heard was it's not just about the money. And I think that's really important. There's lessons from history, and even like Judas got the money, right? When he
Yes.
sold out Jesus, he got the money,
You
but then he
got it.
couldn't give it back. And he realized that the money was a symbol of something more valuable. And we don't want to chase false outcomes. And
Yeah, and
you know,
still working hard right now. It's the Philippine setting is very difficult, but I do believe in working hard
hmm,
and doing your best. Even if you think that you're going nowhere, you're not going nowhere. It's your mindset that's saying that you're not going nowhere,
right,
because you're
right.
growing and then you're changing. It's just a matter of timing on going at the right seat of the bus. While we didn't touch on my career pathing, I was already at the point in the middle of my career that I was a manager. Then I had to change jobs. I went back to being an associate. I was
Mm,
not afraid from being a manager, a department manager, to go back to an associate. And that hotel, this 5-star hotel, didn't want to accept me. They said that, Coleen, you're already a manager. Why are you
you're
taking a,
overqualified.
yeah, you're overqualified. But you know what I said? I said to them, one reason why you should hire me is because you're using a system that I'm proficient in. Because the hotel that that I came from then used this particular system, which they were just using for a few months. I said, I'm certified in this system. You can put me on the floor and make money for you with no problems.
Yeah.
Then you get
Yeah. Look
hired.
at that. Look at that. You have such a high level of emotional intelligence
So
and
I'm
people
like,
skills. I love it.
you need somebody, right? So I'm not going to be a pain to my supervisor, to my boss then. And it doesn't matter. And you know what? I enjoyed being an associate.
Mm,
I finally had more time for myself. I was able to breathe, and then I worked my way up again. So that's the thing that I'm very proud of myself. If I need to step down from whatever pedestal, you can. And there's no shame to start over, because you don't lose anything. You keep your work ethic, You
Mhm.
bring something fresh to the table, but you just need to be mindful to adjust on who you are. You need to know your position at any point. Your position does not define you. I may be vice president in title, but still, I'm somebody that has to work.
Yep,
I need to deliver. I need
yep,
to perform.
yep.
Though some people treat me better because of my title, but I tell them no, everybody has to be treated in the same way, title or no title.
Yeah. Colleen,
Yeah.
such great notes, such great input. If people want to talk to you more, if they want to ask you some questions, what are the best ways to get in touch?
Oh, they can get in touch with me through my email. That's clordona@lserv.com.ph, or they can actually send me a message through LinkedIn. So my messages are open as well. So I'm open for that. And you can post out my contact details as well. I can
Sure,
share that with you.
sure. We'll link to your LinkedIn. So that's Colleen, COLNLUSPORDONA. Try
NA.
to search
Yeah.
her up on LinkedIn. Colleen,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such an
Thank
honor
you,
and a
Daryl.
pleasure. I appreciate you coming and sharing, knowing that you already have your own team to take care of, coming and sharing some knowledge with me and my audience. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.